Early bird gets the podcast. Folks, it may be early, but we are still Pat Gustafson and Brandon Carney here to give you all the football analysis you know and love. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the show. First of all, happy Super Bowl week, obviously. Look, in theory, for a football podcast, this should be like the biggest week of the year, right? But in reality, it's like we focus so much on fantasy, too, that it's like, hey, man, there's only one game this week. Like, what the fuck? But still excited to see who comes away with the ultimate crown here. And second of all, thank you guys for 4,000 subscribers on YouTube. That is a no small feat for sure. We're lightly monetized on YouTube now. We've earned like $10, I think, on that channel. So I'll kick some of that your way eventually, Pat.
Hang on a second. Yes, is this Mickey Mouse? Yeah, I quit. Okay, bye. Actually, we can do this at 7:30 now.
Perfect. All right, we're going to get offline now. And no, Pat has actual work obligations, which is why we're doing the show earlier today. But hey, look, we'll get you to quit that job eventually as soon as Off the Bench is on, Radio Row at the Super Bowl at some point. I think I said that last year. I was like, we'll get there next year. Well, not yet, but eventually. Second piece
I'm a problem in Las Vegas.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't even think about that. Second order of business here. The Pro Bowl did happen this past weekend. Whatever version of the Pro Bowl is a thing now. Pat, look, I didn't sit there and watch the Pro Bowl from start to finish. I don't think a lot of people do. But I'll say this. I'm glad with the direction they've put the Pro Bowl. I saw pretty good reviews on it. And most importantly, I'm glad that the players are actually having fun at the Pro Bowl now, because why would you not, right? Like before it was, you get selected to the Pro Bowl and that's an honor, whatever, but you have to go and you go play this like half-assed football game and it just sucked. Now it's like we get to go and play arcade games and like you get to have the competitive side of you come out and not worry about getting hurt. You got the flag football game at the end of it. I think they found a great formula, so solid job there with the Pro Bowl again this year.
Yeah, I didn't watch a second of it. I wouldn't have watched a second of it regardless of the format. But yeah, I was calling for the removal of the game.
Yeah.
I didn't even years ago I said like just make it like the All-Pro team. Hey, you're named to the Pro Bowl and that's it. Like nothing happens.
Sure.
But I think the idea they came up with is even better here. Guys, duck this thing now because what are you gonna go play some dodgeball and?
Yeah,
throw at targets and look at Jason Kelsey's ass and all sorts of other things that we love doing as Americans.
Exactly. I love that they've implemented all the position groups too. You got like the tug of war with the linemen. You had like the snapping competition for Jason Kelsey. So they've definitely found a good rhythm there. Next piece of business. Look, the NFL honors are this Thursday. And look, we're not going to spend a ton of time on that segment. That's why I kind of just have it here at the top because the winners are all but locked at this point. I think we gave our award winners at some point shortly after the regular season ended. And look, these are the guys who are expected to win. You got Lamar Jackson. He's going to take home MVP. Christian McCaffrey for Offensive Player of the Year. That would have actually been an interesting race with Tyreek Hill if Tyreek didn't miss those games at the end of the season that effectively, lost out to McCaffrey. The odds are actually not super far apart with them, but at this point, if anybody's favored by, minus 275 this late in the game, like they're probably going to win it. There's really no way for another player to make up ground. So McCaffrey's going to end up winning that. Myles Garrett's going to win Defensive Player of the Year. CJ Stroud's going to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. Pat, Defensive Rookie of the Year is one that we actually miscalculated a little bit. I don't know if it was the Texans made the playoffs sort of hype that, I could have swore I saw Will Anderson as the favorite to win this award at the end of the regular season, but it appears Jalen Carter, who we mentioned, is going to actually end up winning this award. He is also not a heavy favorite, but a favorite enough that you expect him to come away with it. Kevin Stefanski's going to win Coach of the Year, and DeMar Hamlin is going to win Comeback Player of the Year in what has been a very uncomfortable, odd award race, because there are some other players who came back into the league or bounced back much in the way that, I guess not Alex Smith. He just came back from a devastating injury, but, in a way that it actually resulted in production on the field. So it's just become this awkward sort of thing where it's like, hey, DeMar was going to win this, but whatever. It's just a very weird conversation.
I still think it should be him, though.
It should be. It's a symbolic award. I mean, he's gonna win it. He won it as soon as he came back.
The man had a fucking heart attack last year on the field and was inches from death. Like,
yeah,
I don't care that he played as few snaps as he did. Like, come on. Any other year, Joe Flacco's story is incredible, but the fact that this man is, even attempting to play football again after what he went through is remarkable. No matter how ass he actually is, and how honestly the heart attack probably kept him on a 53-man roster. unfortunately. And Jalen Carter, I mean, I think this was kind of looked at when it was drafted, but I fear that this is going to be a new Aaron Donald kind of thing. I'm not saying he's going to be as good as Aaron Donald, but just like 8 teams passed up on this guy.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, Donald was never a tippity-top prospect. Like, I think Donald went, like, 14th overall, and that was about where
Donald,
he was going.
He was always considered undersized, so.
But Carter, going into the offseason, was number 1 on everyone's, big boards. Not that he was going to go number 1, that he was a top prospect. Falls to 9 to a great team with a great defense already. And it's just like, how? Like, how? Yeah. Especially the Bears. Oh, he went 10th, I believe. I'm saying 9th, but I think he went 10th.
I think you're right. I think it was 9th. I thought it was 9th. Yeah. We'll confirm here.
I know the Bears traded up.
The off-the-bench analytics research team is hard at work here.
Yeah, I'm on the Wikipedia page. He did go 9th. That was correct.
Okay.
The Bears slipped. They were 10th, but the Bears flopped. That's what it was. Okay, that's why I got confused for a second.
So, yeah, it looks like those awards are all but... Those awards are all but locked up, and yeah, Jalen Carter is definitely going to be an impact player for a long time. And look, with the Damar Hamlin thing, not to harp on it, I feel like it would be cool if the NFL had so this is a weird comparison, and if there's any wrestling fans out there, they will kind of know what I'm talking about. The WWE has this thing called the Warrior Award, which is like if they have somebody in their community or somebody that works for them, like behind the scenes, that has done something like very inspirational, they'll win the Warrior Award at the WWE Hall of Fame ceremony, whatever. I think that would be cool if the NFL had something like that, where it was like a guy who clearly fought back from something very tough, but it wasn't an award that also conflicted with people who actually did things on the field. I don't know if there would be a worthy recipient of that award every year, because you've got DeMar this year. You had, like I said, Alex Smith a couple years ago would have been a great recipient for that, but I guess there wouldn't always be a good person to win it, but just something to think about to avoid these awkward conversations, because you got people looking at Joe Flacco led the Browns to the playoffs. Well, yeah, but Damar Hamlin, made it back to a football field, period. It's like, it's weird things to compare.
Like my YouTube algorithm, excellent job, had your 2023 awards video pop up today, and it's like, oh, Geno Smith, what did he come back from? Being ass? Yes.
Right.
That's the thing. It's like, it's so
that's
hard
what it is.
This award in particular is just so arbitrary, because there's so many things that can define a comeback. There's so many different reasons why you can be down.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very vague thing. And speaking of WWE, Pat, this is not something that you're going to be super in tune to, but it is something that is sweeping the world of wrestling fans and sweeping the world of people who give any sort of shit about The Rock. Hell, George Kittle answered a question about this at Super Bowl Media Day, I think yesterday. I just want to rant about this super fast because it's something that's driving me nuts and has been very much on my mind. So for those of you not in the know of what is going on, WWE last year in their main event of WrestleMania had a match between Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns has been WWE champion for almost 4 years now, which is unheard of in the modern era. Last year, everyone thought Cody Rhodes, returning, he's like this super duper good guy, that he was going to win the title. Well, he didn't win the title. Everyone was super surprised. And then WWE's kind of gone in this year-long expedition of making him continue to look like the guy that's going to challenge for that and be this underdog and be this super popular babyface that everybody's going to root for. And it looked like they were building to that match. Cody won the Royal Rumble, Pat, as I mentioned a couple weeks ago. That means that you are entitled to a main event match at WrestleMania. And then the motherfucking Rock comes back, and he stares down Roman Reigns, and then it's like that's going to be the WrestleMania match. That's what WWE has now shoehorned in to be the WrestleMania main event at the expense of the story that they have been telling for the longest time. So it's got people mad at The Rock because The Rock apparently strong-armed his way into this spot. All I'm going to say is I have faith WWE will get this right. There have been people booing The Rock. There have been people attacking The Rock's social media pages because of this, and I don't think The Rock is going to want that kind of backlash. This is just something that I hope that in a post-Vince McMahon WWE, logic will prevail, and I think we're going to get Cody Rhodes in the main event of WrestleMania, whether it's in a triple threat with The Rock and Roman Reigns or what have you. I think they're going to get it right. So that's all I have to say about that. Cody Rhodes, Pat, I know you didn't even know who that was until I mentioned him for the Royal Rumble. He's been We Want Cody has been trending on Twitter for 4 days straight.
I've seen that. I've had no clue. I haven't really taken the time to look into it, but I've seen stuff about it all over.
Yeah, basically, a full-time wrestler who people are very much behind got screwed out of a main event spot in a match people wanted to see by The Rock, and people are like, fuck off, dude.
I didn't know The Rock was even really affiliated with WWE anymore.
Yeah, he just came back. He made a couple of appearances. He was on a SmackDown that I actually attended like a few months ago by surprise. So The Rock is related to Roman Reigns, which is why this match has always been thought of as a possibility. And they're like, oh, The Rock's a big star. They'll do it eventually. Well, they chose basically the worst time possible to fucking do it. So everyone's like, no, you're not doing this, and we will boo this match out of existence if that's what you try to fucking do at WrestleMania.
Ooh, cancel culture.
Exactly. So I have faith they'll get it right. So that is my rant on that. But guys, for today's
The Rock.
We're canceling The Rock. For today's show, we are going to be talking about the coaching carousel, which has finally mostly stopped spinning. We've got a couple of coordinator jobs left to be filled, but we'll talk about the fantasy implications of these coaches and the coordinators they are bringing on and what that could mean for next year. Obviously so much left to go with roster construction and stuff like that, but we'll get an initial look. We're going to do a best Super Bowl moments draft, best Super Bowl moments of all time. Pat and I will make our picks, and then we'll give you a couple of little baby Super Bowl bets here. Look, we're not going to do a full Super Bowl preview because we did that last week. Go ahead and, check that episode out if you want kind of our full, more expansive thoughts on the game and how we think it could play out, because really nothing's changed since last week. So we're not just going to reiterate all of it, but we'll give you guys a couple of bets and we'll go from there. But Pat, first things first, the coaching carousel has stopped spinning. It's finally stopped spinning. So look, all the head coaching jobs are filled. We made our predictions last week for who those last two spots would go to, and I believe you did, in fact, nail it. I made a video joking about how the Commanders were going to go with just the worst possible option, and I had some faith that they weren't going to do that, so I didn't pick them to do that. That was some misguided faith, it seems, and they have, in fact, hired Dan Quinn, while the Seahawks have gone with Mike Macdonald. We'll start with Macdonald. I love the hire. We both talked about it last week. I think it's a very forward-thinking, a very progressive hire. And honestly, Pat, really the only hire that to me justifies or somewhat justifies firing Pete Carroll. Because firing Pete Carroll and doing whatever they did with him, it sounded like it was like a move to the front office deal, and then we find out he still wants to coach. So that whole situation has been very confusing as to why the Seahawks removed him after all the success that he's had. And I don't know that it was a guarantee they were going to get Mike Macdonald either. Like, I don't think this was a slam dunk. That's why they got rid of him. But lucky for the Seahawks, they're going to avoid, I think, some of those tough questions, at least for now, because they got Mike Macdonald. Young guy, was spearheading the Ravens defense as their defensive coordinator, the best defense in the NFL this year. And I think the Seahawks, that's going to be a very solid hire for them, a team that has a historic culture of defense being their identity. Maybe not as much lately, but they obviously, that you had the Legion of Boom years, and you've got a division with such high-powered offenses, that being, the 49ers and the Rams, just in general, like regardless of the personnel they have on a year-to-year basis, those two offenses know how to score points. The Cardinals off and on know how to score a good amount of points as well. So I think having a defensive sort of, I don't want to call him a mastermind just yet, but a guy who is defensive focused and a seemingly high upside head coach definitely bodes well in their favor.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, it was a bizarre move to fire Pete Carroll or part ways with Pete Carroll. I mean, I get he's tipping 70 years old. Looks phenomenal, by the way. Also looks like Ellen DeGeneres, but that's beside the point. But it's true what you said about defensive identity, and not just Pete Carroll. Like, you look at like Dan Quinn, Gus Bradley. A lot of strong defensive minds have come from this Pete Carroll wing of coaches here. And Macdonald is a guy that could definitely be there for a decade or more. So I think it's a great hire. I think he was probably the best defensive coach out there. Well, if you're not counting Bill Belichick and Mike Vrabel, if we're not counting retreads, Mike Macdonald was probably the best defensive mind out there. So definitely of the guys, they waited a little bit because this was probably their guy. But out of the guys that were available, they got it. They got it right.
Yeah, you hope this was their guy, right? Because, again, you have to justify firing Pete Carroll in some way. And I think if you fired him and you ended up scraping the bottom of the barrel getting Dan Quinn or going for a less proven sort of coordinator or assistant, that would be a really odd and probably bad look for the Seahawks. But benefit of the doubt, maybe this was their plan, and this is a justifiable hire over Pete Carroll. You're definitely leaning toward the youth. I think Mike Macdonald is literally half the age that Pete Carroll is, or at least close to it. So I'm definitely excited to see what he brings to the table as a head coach. He has not yet named an offensive coordinator, so we will be on the lookout for that for fantasy purposes, because that, will obviously tailor a lot of that, especially with a defensive-minded head coach. The offensive coordinator has even more say and even more control over how the offense looks when the head coach is a defensive kind of guy. So we will keep an eye on that. Meanwhile, the Washington Commanders have hired Dan Quinn. Pretty gross hire. All things could. What it sounds like is Ben Johnson was their guy, and they basically got what they feel was screwed out of it because, they were on their way to visit him. Ben Johnson basically texted them and said, "Hey, I'm staying in Detroit," and they were like, "Oh." To me, I've seen a little bit of like animosity toward Ben Johnson for this decision, and I'm like, he's very much allowed to not accept that job, and the Commanders very much should have a backup plan. Like, regardless of how much of a slam dunk they think the hire is with Ben Johnson, you can't put all your eggs in that basket for a guy unless he has definitively told you like he's coming there. So I don't really have any sympathy for the Commanders for what they ended up with here with Dan Quinn. This is what you do. This is what happens when you're in like kind of a head coaching purgatory and you're trying to find that next guy. Like, there's not always going to be good options out there, and if there are, they may not want to come to you. So Dan Quinn is the guy they went with. The one thing I'll say about it is, look, it's not a terrible hire from a like zooming out point of view. It's a very vanilla hire, but Dan Quinn is considered a good leader. And what this is going to come down to is just the coordinators and what kind of not culture, because I guess Dan Quinn's brought there specifically to be the culture builder, but just what kind of game plans the coordinators can come up with to make this team more competitive and less of a dumpster fire than what it's been.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the whole thing with getting coaches that are currently coaching. The coaching hiring process starts immediately when a lot of these guys aren't available. This opens the door for that. And, you can't have animosity against Ben Johnson. It's not like he pulled a Josh McDaniels.
Exactly.
Josh McDaniels agreed to the deal and then bailed. And this isn't that, but I think I would like to hire a little more if it just wasn't Ron Rivera to Dan Quinn.
I agree.
Like, I'm trying to think of if something, like the Panthers or, someone like that hired Dan Quinn. Moving on from Frank Reich, it's like, okay, but this is just such a samey hire, just like, 5 years younger Ron Rivera. And Dan Quinn's a good coach and he is a good leader. And again, we'll talk about Cliff Kingsbury more, but I mean, he is going to be the key here. Whichever quarterback they end up with, whether they pick it 2 or trade up to 1, this is going to decide the next decade of this franchise. And do I expect Dan Quinn to be there for a very long time? No. I feel like this is one in a couple of years that we could see turning around quickly, unfortunately.
Yeah. I mean, Dan Quinn, again, I just feel like he's a fine hire. I don't see things going as poorly as they did under Ron Rivera, although that is a distinct possibility. I don't want to be too over-optimistic with all these hires either, because, again, some hires are not going to work out, even though, I feel like there's a tendency, maybe it's just me, that when a team gets rid of a head coach or a coordinator that was underperforming, you, like, automatically assume the next guy is going to be an improvement because you're optimistic, right? You got rid of the bad, so you're bringing in something else, and that's got to be at least marginally better. And it sounds good in the moment, but year in and year out, we know that not every coaching hire works out. Obviously, that's why you get 8 to 10, head coach openings every year. That might be overselling it a little bit, but this year there were a lot.
Usually this is going to 5 or 6.
Yeah, this year's going to come down to the coordinators for the Commanders, or I guess the next several years will. And Dan Quinn, look, he made a Super Bowl. I mean, again, that was largely with the coordinators as well. Kyle Shanahan was there at the time, but maybe these guys will, carry him not to a Super Bowl. But the Commanders and Super Bowl is a sentence that there could not be more words in between those two terms right now. So they're just looking to get in the competitive
joke where it's like, the only time the Commanders and the Super Bowl in the same sentences will never be in the middle. That's stupid.
Exactly. So, I mean, look, the Commanders are just looking for any sort of like marginal improvement now. Like they'll be happy to start with a winning record and then go from there. Even if it doesn't happen this year, it'll still be. It's going to be a slower build. And I think Dan Quinn, he can be okay, but it's certainly not an exciting hire. But Pat, again, back to our roots here as a fantasy football podcast. There are many fantasy football situations that are going to be affected by new head coaching and especially new offensive coordinator hires. So let's just go down the list now one by one now that all the head coaching jobs have been filled and say, look, stock up or stock down for the fantasy assets on each of these teams? We'll start with the Atlanta Falcons, one that we have touched on a bit already. Head coach Raheem Morris and offensive coordinator Zach Robinson. Pat's got his 2 fingers pointing up. It's definitely stock up for all the Falcons skill players. If for no other reason, then you have to assume there will be more logical usage of players like we've touched on. And look, I'm optimistic for Zach Robinson coming off of the Sean McVay coaching tree, but there is also a slight bit of risk with anybody who is, a first-time offensive coordinator and first-time play caller. So there's going to be a risk to that degree. But at the same time, like, Bijan Robinson and Drake London and Kyle Pitts literally just need bare minimum competence to produce. We saw it with Arthur Smith that they were still almost putting up startable fantasy numbers each week. At least, Drake London and Bijan were. Pitts was a little bit more hot and cold, but he was also dealing with a more complicated knee injury than we thought. But yes, this is definitely stock up just because they're going to be on the field more and I think see more targets than they were in the past. It's just going to come down to who the quarterback ends up being.
Yeah, and whether it's Desmond Ridder or someone else, like we've seen guys perform in fantasy with bad quarterbacks, obviously. The one I'm the most tepid on, at least right now, is Drake London, just because there's so many other options. Like, Kyle Pitts, you're lucky if there's double-digit strong tight ends. So, he's really going to get put in the equation. I'm still, going to be a little worried after 2 years of hype train. Well, the hype train died this year, but I think this is mostly for Bijan. No digs at Tyler Algier here, but Bijan is a stud. Like, he was drafted in the top 10 because of what he is. And I think in every league, Bijan should probably be a top 5 pick. Going into this, if you have him in Dynasty, I have him in Dynasty. I'm ecstatic for this year and the future. But, Donald Duck could be the head coach of this team and make them better than Arthur Smith. It feels like it was sometimes. Just, it's the more consistent usage will make these guys far more palatable fantasy assets here. And, it is his first time, but, you got to start somewhere. And this is a good spot to start when you've got 3 of, top prospects from the last handful of years.
Yeah, and again, like my rule of thumb for fantasy football, as you know, and I'll repeat this every day until the day I die, is to go excessively safe for your first few picks. And normally, a situation like this where you're getting a first-time offensive coordinator and a head coach who has a bit of a proven track record of not being anything special would make me nervous, but not when we're coming off of what we just had last year, which was, Bijan Robinson still almost giving you enough value as an RB1 and giving it to you.
Yards still?
Very close. I think he was just under. But Bijan Robinson, I believe finished as an RB1 still, like overall top 12 running back. So the fact that he did that tells me that, even though it's a first time OC and there should be a little bit of tepidness to go along with that, it's not enough for me to say that I'm not going to draft Bijan. It's still going to be an improvement over whatever the fuck that was with Arthur Smith.
And you were right at 976, which might as well be 1,000 yards. But the fact that he got the 976 under the circumstances is remarkable.
I did see a video on TikTok yesterday. It was trying to kind of defend Arthur Smith, or at least saying how him going to the Steelers is going to be good for the Steelers running backs, which I agree, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But it was Bijan Robinson only got 4 less carries than Christian McCaffrey did his rookie year. And I was like, Bijan Robinson is competing with 4th round mid-ass running back Tyler Algier. He's fine, but he's mid, let's be honest. Christian McCaffrey was competing with Jonathan Stewart, who, while he was at the end of his Panthers career at that point, that's Jonathan Stewart. That's an established... It's not the same thing. What Arthur Smith did, still very much inexcusable. We'll move on here to the Buffalo Bills, Pat. This one's just them officially committing to the guy who was their offensive coordinator the second half of this year, that being Joe Brady. He's officially got that title, and I think this... Look, the Bills are a team that we've talked about, Pat. We expect them to make some kind of move, most likely with their personnel, that they're not just going to run back the exact same offensive players next season. So we'll talk about that when we know more about it. But for 2 players we can talk about, James Cook. This is undoubtedly a positive for James Cook, and I know that the end of this regular season was a little uninspiring for him. It was 3 straight games of less than 7 points in PPR. But look, those stretches are going to happen. We're not saying that James Cook is a locked-in top 10 running back, what have you. We are saying that this is much better for James Cook than a Ken Dorsey offense was, because James Cook saw 20-plus touches once before Joe Brady took over in Week 11. Then he got 20-plus touches 4 times in the final 7 weeks.
It's beautiful.
It's a beautiful thing. And James Cook, again, you had those last 3 weeks of the regular season. You have Josh Allen, who's going to vulture touchdowns with his legs. It just is what it is. But James Cook, as much as he's going to be a high variance type of running back, his floor is higher with Joe Brady, and the ceiling's higher because you're going to have those games with 20-plus touches, and he's going to get you, 30 in PPR every once in a while. So if they don't bring in another notable running back to that backfield, this is undoubtedly a boon for James Cook. He got just objectively a lot more work when Joe Brady took over. On the flip side, you've got Stephon Diggs, Pat, who not looking as good for him. I don't even know. Assuming Stephon Diggs is still a Buffalo Bill next year, and assuming, let's say they don't bring in another notable wide receiver too. Let's say it's Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis, or an equivalent to Gabe Davis. I believe Gabe's a free agent this year, but let's say same type of offense. Where do you rank? What do you do with Stephon Diggs next year? He's still the number 1 target in an offense that's going to throw a lot, but this dude didn't exist for 2 months under Joe Brady.
Yeah, I believe what I got it written down. See, I write stuff down for this sometimes. Yeah, he had over 86 yards a game with Ken Dorsey, and then went to 38 under Joe Brady.
God, it doesn't even sound real.
That's not just that's catastrophic. That is a significant drop, and there's really no explanation for it. Even if you're running the ball more, it's they don't have a whole lot else. You're looking at Gabe Davis, Khalil Shakir, Dalton Kincaid. I mean, I guess if we're moving on with Diggs in there, Dalton Kincaid's stock is going to go way up as well next year. But I just think the thing is they can't get rid of him. He's got a really hefty extension that kicks in this year. I believe it's 4 years, or hundreds of millions of dollars. It's who's gonna take that right now? And we know that he had a little tiff with Josh Allen entering the season this year. It just seems like a bad situation all around. And Stephon Diggs, we're talking about a guy who was really kind of at the top of tier 2 this year. It was Chase, and it was Kupp, and I'm forgetting Justin Jefferson, and Tyreek, and then Diggs was kind of the next man up. You can't put him back there. You can't put him back there, but at the same time, it's you can't rate him that lowly either because, like you said, he's still Stephon Diggs. They still don't have a whole lot else going on there. But, we'll get a lot more clarity. I think if they can get rid of him, if they can find a team that will take him, and his contract, I think they'll do it. I think that's going to be priority number 1 for them is moving on from him.
It almost feels like Stephon Diggs is going to follow sort of a DeAndre Hopkins-esque trajectory where it's they're going to trade it, or he's going to end up on more of a rebuilding team or somebody with a young quarterback that needs a more reliable target, something to that effect, if he were to go somewhere. Pat, I put together my way too early and very much adjustable fantasy football rankings for this upcoming year. I at least did top 20 at each position. Pat, and this is what made me question this, but it's what I have right now. I have Stephon Diggs as wide receiver 21. And let me read off the players ahead of him, and you tell me if you'd rather have Stephon Diggs over any of these guys. Well, I'll just go top down. Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, Tyreek Hill, Puka Nacua, A.J. Brown, Nico Collins, Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harrison Jr., don't care, Cooper Kupp, Keenan Allen, Deebo Samuel, Tank Dell, Michael Pittman, DJ Moore, Rashee Rice, Brandon Ayuk, and Devontae Adams.
See, we're getting as you get further down that list, I definitely think it is. I started to think more. At first, obviously, it was just the first guy that made me think was Nico Collins, just because, who knows what happens year 2 under Stroud. To Collins and Dell, that's to the point.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think at the very least, we are talking about a mid to low tier wide receiver 2, as of where things stand. I think it's fair to put Marvin Harrison Jr. ahead of him, obviously, assuming he's going to be in. God, Patrick, blanking on who was the 4th pick right now.
Arizona.
Cardinals. Oh, God. Yeah, assuming he's a Cardinal. With Kyler, yeah, I'd rather have Marvin Harrison. But I think you've got it in the right ballpark for sure. But
I'm also ageist. Let's not let the people forget that. Stephon Diggs is going to be 31, a few weeks into next year, I guess. 2 months. His birthday's on November 29th. So he'll be 30 to start the year, 31 in the middle of it, and I feel like Stephon Diggs, Pat, and I admit that I may be a little too harsh on him, but this is where I'm going to rank a guy who disappeared for 2 months at the end of the year and is getting older. It's just where it is.
No.
I may be too harsh on him, but it feels like Stephon Diggs, assuming he is ranked a little higher than where I have him, is just going to be a complete do not draft for me. I don't know why I would want him.
Yeah, I mean, I think if he gets traded, I think we're talking about a different story, because this is a guy that, like, can clearly still perform. He was, on track to, he was top 5, in all wide receiver categories under Ken Dorsey, but just the fall off for no reason. Like, he wasn't injured, there wasn't a change in quarterback.
Yeah.
Just a change of play calling, personnel, to fall off that quick. It's alarming. It's alarming, but I think it's going to be the story of this offseason, basically until free agency and until the draft, to kind of truly, have an opinion on this. But it's just, that's what's going to need to happen here, because it's a scary situation with him.
Yeah, a baffling drop-off on a team that, has solid supporting weapons, but nothing that should have neutralized Stephon Diggs to that degree for, again, 2 months. Like, it was unbelievable to see. Moving on to the Carolina Panthers. Head coach Dave Canales and offensive coordinator Brad Idzik. Canales will call plays, which, Pat, he actually did that for the first time this past year with the Bucs, and I'd say it went pretty well. Idzik, a guy that he has some history with, coming with him to Carolina. This, to me, has to be a stock up at least slightly kind of thing. But again, it's sort of wait and see, because the Panthers don't have any fantasy assets right now anyway. It's like maybe Chuba Hubbard, and that's about it.
And I stand. He will not be the only running back in that room, though.
No, I mean, Miles Sanders is still around to whatever degree he's going to be around. I know they signed him to, I think, a 4-year deal, at least a 3-year deal this past offseason. So he should still be around. But I don't.
Where?
In catering, or like
ball boy, yeah,
hot dog vendor. I'm not real sure.
Yeah, that man, dust.
He is dust. But
in terms of wide receivers, in terms of targets, they haven't. We're talking DJ Chark, Adam Thielen. God, don't do it, Patrick. Don't forget Jonathan Mingo was kind of this hot thing going into and his targets kind of spiked at the middle of the year, and everyone got all excited. It just never happened. But I'm not using any kind of draft capital on Jonathan Mingo. Or no, even Chuba Hubbard, like, he's still what I would put him as one of the low. It can only go up. And obviously, Canales revived Geno Smith. He revived Baker Mayfield. It's not even reviving Bryce Young. It's basically kickstarting Bryce Young.
He's got to give him complete CPR.
It can only go up from here. And I mean, like, this is going to be one of those things where, like, this team's probably going to be pretty bad again. But, that's okay. It's just basically, this team is going to be judged more so not by wins and losses, but by the development of Bryce Young and how good he can get. But I'm not touching him either. There's this, it's just bad. It's not a good offense.
They signed Canales to, I want to say, a 6-year deal, which, I was reading kind of some of the speculation on that contract and what it would mean. And it generally, a deal that long, especially for a first-time head coach, signifies that the organization is going to be fairly patient with that guy and with the rebuild that they're going to, have to undergo. I think there's a good chance that there's really no fantasy relevant players on a consistent basis on this Panthers team. I think as the offseason chugs along, I'm sure some steam will pick up on guys like Mingo as a later round pick. And I understand that. Sure, throw the dart if you want to. But I ultimately think that there tends to be this sort of faith that bad teams will have all this garbage time production. And it always sounds better in theory than it actually ends up playing out. In general, you don't really want players on bad teams if you can help it in fantasy. Like, it just doesn't end up working out most of the time, or at least not as well as you think it will. So Dave Canales and Brad Idzik, I think, are certainly a positive for the Panthers. I don't know that positive is going to reflect itself in the immediate future. Now, we will have to reevaluate this, Pat, if they get a guy who is already fantasy relevant onto this offense, like a T. Higgins. We'll have to figure out what exactly we expect from a guy like that. I would be somewhat interested. Yeah, I would be somewhat interested in a guy like T. Higgins, who is going to be the clear number one target on an offense where Canales is going to be trying to bring up another quarterback and try to get, good production out of him, which he has succeeded doing in the past. We'll talk about that when we get there. But yeah, as of now, positive for the Panthers, but can't really pinpoint any players that this is going to be great for other than just Bryce Young's overall development, one would think. Yeah. The Chicago Bears have, surprisingly enough, I guess, did not move on from their head coach, Matt Eberflus, but they are bringing in offensive coordinator Shane Waldron from Seattle. So this was the note I dug up. Shout out to Courtney Cronin from ESPN, who put an article together on Shane Waldron after this hire. We are likely to be looking at a more pass-heavy Bears team. So the Seahawks, the last 2 years under Shane Waldron, 64% pass and 36% run, which is a crazy percentage, whereas the Bears have been 55% pass and 45% run. So we are probably looking at the Bears throwing more. This is going to be a good thing for DJ Moore, regardless of which quarterback it is throwing to him, whether it's Justin Fields or Caleb Williams or whoever the fuck else it could be. I'm guessing those are the only two options. This definitely sounds like a good thing for the passing game overall. And another note that Shane Waldron favors multiple tight end sets, 4th highest rate in the league the last 2 years. I mean, look, Cole Kmet is already kind of a stock up kind of guy. I don't know.
Robert Tonyan, fire him up.
The second tight end in 2 tight end sets very rarely is also a good receiving option alongside the number one. But it's just an interesting note.
Patriots tandem from a number of years ago.
It feels like
that second guy, but
I don't know. I think he went to work on a farm somewhere. But yeah, it seems like constantly people are trying to compare or recreate, a productive 2 tight end combo, at least in their head for like fantasy purposes. They're like, oh, 2 guys can work out. Doesn't really happen. If anything, what this does, Pat, is it takes another wide receiver off the field, which in turn probably gives more targets to DJ Moore, if I had to guess. Yeah. So just a definite positive. Shane Waldron is a good offensive mind, and I'm excited to see this one play out.
Hot commodity. He was my first choice for the Raiders once, they were going to move on from, I don't even remember their interim's name. I'm fried today, but and he was, I believe the Saints wanted him as well. And I think all of this is leading to retaining Eberflus, getting a more pass-heavy guy. Caleb Williams is going to be the starting quarterback on this team next year, I think. I think they're going to keep the pick, roll with him, trade Justin Fields, and probably get a pretty good return. And we'll see what this kid has. I mean, we're talking, we said it with Trevor Lawrence too, but this is the best prospect since Andrew Luck.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be the combination here for us to see that.
Yeah, I mean, Caleb Williams is definitely going to be a guy that will sling the ball downfield, assuming he does end up being a Chicago Bear. In terms of the initial kind of evaluation of the current Bears skill players, like we said, DJ Moore stock up, Cole Kmet stock up, running back stock down, Pat. I mean, these Bears running backs were difficult enough to figure out this past year. Now you bring in an OC that apparently doesn't want to run the ball, at least compared to other teams. And, it just makes this stack of, I'm assuming Deonta Foreman's a free agent, but it makes at least the Khalil Herbert, Roshan Johnson question, more of a, I'm not even going to ask this question anymore. Like, yeah. I'm going to avoid the running backs on this team, even though they will be subtracting a running quarterback. I mean, Caleb Williams can move, but, Justin Fields getting out of there should, in theory, open up some opportunities for those backs. But if they're going to be running the ball that little, I just don't care. I mean, I'm all set.
I think we really wanted to see that Roshan Johnson break out at the end of the year. That didn't really happen, even though it should have. It
sort of happened, like a little bit.
Touches went up, but we didn't see like him truly overtake that backfield like I think everybody hoped would happen. Sure. And Khalil Herbert is just mid enough to knock him down a bit. And you're absolutely right. I mean, outside of DJ Moore and Cole Kmet as well. Not a whole lot of appealing non-quarterbacks in fantasy, at least right now.
Yeah, and I just double-checked. Khalil Herbert is under contract this upcoming year, so it will likely be still Khalil Herbert, Roshan Johnson, and who knows behind those guys. But just that enough is enough to muck it up.
They have the 9th pick in a fantastic wide receiver class. I mean, they could really easily go get Romeo Doubs or, oh, God, Patrick, don't do it. Malik Gabers will be gone. But, there's a lot of options for them to improve this offense as well.
I want it known that I know what you just did. You just said Malik Gabers, and I know that's because you were thinking of Gabe Neighbors, the fullback who is on some team. I heard that. I was like, Malik Neighbors is the LSU wide receiver, but I was like, I know Pat doesn't generally. I'm like, I know you don't normally just mispronounce names. Like, you know players' names for the most part. I was like, but you love fullbacks too, so I know where that came from. That's okay.
I don't think. I think it just came from the fact that I am just so cooked beyond belief.
You're a marble mouth. You're just
yeah, I need stay hydrated, kids.
Malik labors. All right, moving on to your team, Pat. The Oakland, just kidding, Las Vegas Raiders bringing in, well, I guess hiring fully head coach Antonio Pierce, and then Pat. Pat has a finger gun in his mouth currently. I can only assume because the Raiders have brought in offensive coordinator Luke Getsy. And again, I am an admitted over-optimist when it comes to new hires. Pat, this was the first one that I found it pretty easy to not be super optimistic for. Let me get your take on what hiring Luke Getsy means.
Just don't get it. Obviously, it's almost like the joke like NHL coaches, like it's just the same 30 guys getting passed around. It tends to happen with offensive coordinators, but a lot of the times when that happens is when things kind of just don't work out. But this was a case where this guy was bad. The Bears' offense was bad. Justin Fields was bad. And now he's getting hired to a defensive-minded head coach who's going to need someone to give... But everything else he did was great. Keeping Patrick Graham, bring in Marvin Lewis, bring in Hugh Jackson, bring in all this experience. In Luke Getsy? Granted, they're going to run the ball a lot. Whether it's Josh Jacobs or whether it's Zamir White. They ran the ball a lot under Antonio Pierce as the head coach. And obviously Getsy, we talked about it. Getsy's a run-first offense. Bears were second in the league last year in rushing attempts, rushing yards. They love to run the ball. And that's fine, but how is he going to develop whatever quarterback they end up with? And, my first thought was, oh, God, they're going to trade for Justin Fields. Was the first thing that popped into my head, but it's just like, I just think, we'll talk about a guy like Alex Van Pelt, who they interviewed, who I was, hoping, I'm like, this is the guy. And, then I'm even praying, call Eric Bieniemy. Call Eric
still
Bieniemy.
Available.
And Luke Getsy, obviously was successful as the quarterback's coach in Green Bay under Aaron Rodgers and Nathaniel Hackett, of all people. Maybe that's why. Maybe he's more of a Nathaniel Hackett than an Aaron Rodgers here right now.
Yeah.
But just such an underwhelming hire on things that were looking so good. Everything else the Raiders had done this offseason had looked really, really good. And, now we'll see if it's through the draft or if it's through Justin Fields or free agency. We'll see who the quarterback is on that team. But, Luke Getsy's got a lot to prove here. Luke Getsy's got a lot to prove that he is a competent offensive coordinator, which I'm still not buying.
I would think this completely precludes the Raiders from getting Justin Fields, because I think if Justin Fields got traded to the team that Luke Getsy was coordinating for, he would not get on that plane. So I can't imagine that's the route they go. But just some notes on Getsy. So the Bears under Getsy were 5th best in the league in expected points added per play on scripted plays. So, the first 15 plays of the game that he's scheming up, they were really good at that. And then after that, in non-scripted plays, the Bears were 5th worst in the league. So Getsy certainly has his strengths in terms of game planning. He's good off the top. He is not good at mid-game adjustments or early game adjustments even. That seems to be what the numbers suggest. Once he has to go off of what he has previously schemed up, it does not go well. Getsy, yeah, Pat, I alluded to it, he made baffling choices with Justin Fields. There were times where he completely ignored the fact that Justin Fields was a mobile quarterback. He didn't design nearly enough runs for the guy, didn't get him moving enough. And it just shows, again, just kind of a lack of comprehension of what you are working with on your team.
Fields is publicly calling him and Matt Eberflus out as well. He was notably unhappy. And, we did see Fields start to perform a little bit better towards the end of the year. But, yeah, just... I don't know what... It would be a different story if Getsy had resounding success as an OC before, failed with Justin Fields this year. We have not seen anything to indicate that this guy will be a competent offensive coordinator. You could say that about all these first-time off, like Brad Idzik, for example, but we've seen him be under Dave Canales, and he's not going to have the power. We've seen Luke Getsy actually fail. There's a difference between these guys that we haven't seen anything from yet and guys that we have seen not be successful at all.
Yeah, I'm definitely concerned about this one. But hey, maybe working with a quarterback that's not Justin Fields or that is more of an adept, overall passer will work out better. I don't know, but as of now, it is definitely it's confusing that he was such a sought after guy. Not just that the Raiders wanted him and hired him, but that he was kind of a highly interviewed guy around the league. So definitely.
So maybe people think it's a fluke, and these guys probably know a bit more than we do. So.
We'd like to think that, and then again, you have a Denver Broncos team that hired Nathaniel Hackett to be their head coach once. So I don't always assume they know better than we do. We'll stay in that division, Pat. We've got the Chargers hiring head coach Jim Harbaugh and offensive coordinator Greg Roman. Now this one is very interesting because Roman was Harbaugh's offensive coordinator the entirety of his stint in San Francisco from 2011 to 2014. So you can kind of go back and compare, but also you can't fully go back and compare because I don't know if you know this, Pat, Justin Herbert is not Alex Smith, nor is he Colin Kaepernick. So you have to assume things are going to be a little different.
And let's be honest here, he's not even really Lamar Jackson. I mean, not to say he's better than Lamar, but he's very different.
Yeah, definitely.
We've seen Greg Roman more work with mobile guys like Lamar and Colin Kaepernick. I'm more so just curious here, to see how this is going to work out with Herbert. And obviously, whoever is the running back on that team next year, good for you, because Greg Roman loves running the ball. And even though you made a note here that they don't target running backs, which in PPR, that hurts a little bit. But I think you've got to think that's going to be a good enough offense that there's going to be plenty of, quality touches, goal line touches for whoever this is. Unfortunately, it seems that it will not be our good friend, Austin Eckler. Friend of the show, Austin Eckler. Yeah, it just doesn't seem like that's going to work with his, you hating old people. And I got to jump on the bandwagon for a second. I just can't see. I can't see, especially with all the running backs out there, I can't see them bringing him back. But just puzzling. You'd think you'd want a younger guy to really go with Herbert here. But hey, Greg Roman has had quality offenses. It's just, is this quality offense going to bring the best out of Justin Herbert, who again is always viewed as one of these elite quarterbacks, and it's just we haven't quite seen that yet. And while it may have been maybe out of his control, they were a disaster last year. We'll talk more about Kellen Moore, but they were a disaster last year. All things considered, then he got hurt, of course, but we have never seen him reach that truly elite tier. He's right there. He's knocking on the door, but we haven't quite seen it yet. And is that going to happen under Greg Roman? I genuinely don't know. In theory, you'd think no, but I am sitting back and I am watching, and we're going to see what happens.
Yeah, that is one thing about this is it doesn't make me innately optimistic for Justin Herbert to take this huge step forward. At least not for fantasy purposes. Maybe he'll become just a more efficient player with such a what we expect to be a stronger run game under Greg Roman, regardless of what running back they end up bringing in to lead that charge. But under Harbaugh and under Roman, I think things will be a little more stable. But yeah, I mentioned the running back target thing. It certainly would seem to spell the end of Austin Eckler in LA because Frank Gore was obviously the primary running back.
Are we looking for a third co-host?
Maybe. Frank Gore was obviously the primary running back in San Francisco for the duration of Harbaugh's time there. Harbaugh with Greg Roman, and these were Frank Gore's target totals in the years before Harbaugh and Roman got there. So second year of his career, Gore had 86 targets in the receiving game. So 86, 69, nice, 66, nice. 75, and 72. Then Roman gets there, and you go from the 70s and the 60s to 31, 36, 27, and 19. Keep in mind, yes, these were all full 16 games from Frank Gore. He played every game. So that is cut in half. So you are not looking at any sort of receiving production from any running back that gets brought in here. That's what makes me nervous for some of the speculation of Saquon Barkley, who, yes, it would probably be an overall positive for Saquon in a Greg Roman run scheme, but Saquon's a guy who really excels in the pass game as well. So that would be kind of a maybe not an ideal fit. I would like to see almost just a bruiser back kind of going here, like an old school guy who's just not, maybe super versatile. Give me advanced Gus Edwards in this offense. Let's bring Gus over from Baltimore.
He is a free agent.
I don't think that's a terrible fit at all with Greg Roman. I mean, he's obviously succeeded with Gus in the past. Gus had a great year this year, not under Roman, but a guy who has also succeeded with Roman in the past.
When you're as one-dimensional as Gus Edwards could probably work anywhere. I mean, if he's in a shit offense, no, in any competent offense, Gus Edwards is going to work because all you got to do is be at the 1 yard line and hand his fat ass the ball, and you got 6 points. But Gus, I was thinking more terrible like AJ Dillon, but he's just bad. But Gus Edwards is someone who can certainly. But I mean, there's a lot like Saquon, Josh Jacobs potentially, our boy Eckler and Zeke, God forbid. This is a pretty healthy running back free agent class here. There's probably several others that I am forgetting.
I'll make this call, Pat. I'll predict this right now because he's the perfect type of running back for this scheme. Even though he's not.
Saw the name.
No. It's not an NFL free agent. It's not.
Oh.
There's a guy who is going to be in this draft who is not going to be a super high pick, and so he's going to be very affordable. Get Blake Corum reunited with Jim Harbaugh in Los Angeles, and I think it's a perfect fit.
You got to think they're going to gun for him. The name I saw, out of all these running backs that I've just listed, I've forgotten the best one. Hello, Derrick Henry. Apologies, sir. Apologies. I have forgotten the biggest one. And again, he would fit
Oldest
great,
one,
too.
But yeah.
He would fit great, too.
He would.
And we will see. But I think that is, honestly, out of like most of these like free agent spots, I think that's the Chargers running back is going to be the most like sought after for fantasy. I think whoever goes there will certainly propel themselves into the RB1 unless they go with a committee. Please no. But if they get a Derrick Henry or a Saquon, I think that is is reasonably going to keep them in the RB1 conversation.
Yeah, people are going to be somewhat excited about whatever the Chargers running back ends up being. It's just a matter of if it's a guy like, Derrick Henry or Saquon Barkley who's going to be a first, second round pick in fantasy, or is it going to be, a standout in next year's RB dead zone because it's a less heralded guy, but who's going to be in a great situation and there's just going to be so many moving parts that we don't really know what to expect, but reasons for optimism. Perfect RB dead zone kind of description. But we'll see who they end up going with. It's probably not going to be anybody on the current roster. I can't see them committing to Josh Kelly or Isaiah Spiller. I just don't see that happening. And we think Eckler's probably gone. We will move on to the New England Patriots here, Pat. Head coach Gerard Mayo and offensive coordinator Alex Van Pelt. Now,
I think you guys nailed it.
I agree. I was very excited to see the Alex Van Pelt hire. This is interesting for fantasy right now because there's not many weapons on the team to care about. Honestly, it's very similar to the Panthers. Really, all you're looking at is Ramondre Stevenson, who's going to be fantasy relevant for as long as he's on the roster. It's just to what degree. And then outside of him, we don't know what this receiving room is going to look like at all next year. We know Demario Douglas will be around and have a role. That much is expected. But the next most relevant fantasy player on the Patriots, other than Zeke in a fill-in role this year, was Hunter Henry because he's such a red zone option. But he's a free agent, unrestricted free agent Hunter Henry. And even if he re-signs, and even if all goes according to plan, he's still not going to be anything better than tight end 11 or 12, and that's probably pushing it. So this is going to be, again, a kind of rebuild this offense sort of situation. But under Alex Van Pelt, I am excited to see how it goes because reports are that Van Pelt's firing from Cleveland came from upper management, not from Kevin Stefanski, and it was because the offense wasn't suited well for Deshaun Watson, who's the guy they've committed to. And look, Pat, I think gross, yeah, but I think that's fair from both sides. It's Van Pelt proved that he can create a great offense from whoever the fuck at quarterback, Joe Flacco, PJ Watt. He can make an offense that functions under basically anyone. But then you got upper management who's look, for better or for worse, Deshaun is the guy we've got under contract to big money for a long time. We need something that gets the best out of him. And we saw from Deshaun Watson, his numbers were not very good under Alex Van Pelt in that offense. So I understand maybe going for a guy who's going to get the most out of Deshaun. The only thing it makes me wonder, and this is probably looking too far ahead, is, look, Jaden Daniels is one of the guys in consideration for the Patriots, theoretically, at number 3, mobile quarterback. So is Alex Van Pelt going to be the right guy to coach that kind of player? Maybe the Patriots are already thinking about going a different direction, or I don't know. That feels like a weird fit, assuming that these criticisms of Van Pelt are accurate, that he can't, get the most out of a mobile quarterback. But I don't know. I don't exactly know what to think about that, but I'm overall happy just because the Browns offense was good this year with some weird fucking personnel. So,
and I'm more intrigued that this is the first time in a long time that we are going to see a non-Bill Belichick disciple run this offense.
Yep.
You know, whether it be Josh McDaniels or Bill O'Brien or fucking Charlie Weiss and his fupa, and even worse, Matt Patricia and Joe Judge.
Oh,
so,
God.
This is the first, I love the move from Mayo because it's not like a Belichick-like hire.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't know what you're doing over there.
Trying to focus my camera here. So
I'm like, what
I'm
the
in the
fuck?
background.
I'm like, is this like code
I'm
for
not,
something?
I'm not telling you to stop. There we go. All right, I'm back. Hi, continue.
But yeah, I like the move because this doesn't seem like a Belichick-esque hire. And the big thing for Mayo is he going to be able to distinguish himself from what everyone has known from the Patriots for 2 decades? Yeah. So, but I think this is a great hire. Like I said, he was probably my number 1 choice of the available options, him and Shane Waldron, for the Raiders. So, I think you nailed it. You know, we'll see. It's true. You make a good point with Jaden Daniels, but you know, has he? I guess he hasn't really added much of it. Well, P.J. Walker and Dorian Thompson-Robinson.
Honestly, most of their quarterbacks were mobile, but the quarterback just wasn't where their production was coming from. It was from the run game being incredible.
So, I mean, you know, we'll see what he can do potentially with a high volume, you know, a high level running quarterback. And he looks like Mike McCarthy.
Yeah, he does.
He used to stand next to Mike McCarthy on the sideline in Green Bay, and it's just like, excuse me.
Couldn't tell. I remember, oh my God, you just unlocked a memory. I forgot about that. I was like, who the fuck is that decoy Mike McCarthy on the sideline? What am I looking at? But yeah.
Alex Van Pelt. That's your boy now.
Reason for optimism with Alex Van Pelt. Again, just like you, Pat, I was excited that it wasn't just a Belichick disciple because they did hire from within for the defensive coordinator spot, with I believe his name's DeMarcus Covington. And not that there were any super prominent options for the offensive side of the ball, and they were definitely interviewing plenty of guys out of the organization. I was just worried. I was like, I don't want more of the same here.
Steven Belichick,
new head coach of the Washington Huskies, baby.
Defensive coordinator.
Oh, sorry, defensive.
Yeah,
is it?
Yeah,
you're right. You're right.
He's
My
DC.
bad.
Yeah,
giving him too much credit. Yeah, so congrats to Steve. Okay, moving on to the Philadelphia Eagles, Pat. Offensive coordinator is now Kellen Moore. The report here is that Nick Sirianni is relinquishing some control of the offense, and he wanted the OC to be somebody who is fully in charge of that side of the ball. So Moore is likely to, obviously game plan, call the plays, and according to this list from Mike Clay, there are 18 offensive-minded, quote-unquote, head coaches in the league. Sirianni is going to become one of just 4 who does not call plays himself, joining Dan Campbell, Doug Peterson, and Brian Daboll. So a bit of a unique situation here, and a bit of probably a last gasp from Sirianni to try and save his job and just do what's right for the team overall. And maybe Kellen Moore's the move.
He's trying to save his job, but I think this is also another fall guy situation. Because if that offense is struggling, he can just say, it wasn't me. Like, he can just say...
I think he gets fired either way, though.
I mean, still, but I like Kellen Moore hire. I mentioned how things were just kind of a disaster in Los Angeles last year. I don't think... obviously things did not go well, but I don't think you can really pin that on Kellen Moore. And we've seen him be really successful in Dallas when Mike McCarthy isn't making him call plays up the gut 20 times. But... yeah. But yeah, I think it makes sense. Get an established guy in an offense that still has a lot of talent. There is a lot of talent on that offense, and but it also is kind of like a Sirianni being like, hey, one, he's trying to save his job, but he's also trying to pad his job a little bit, I think too. But this is such a make or break year.
Yeah, I think, again, you look at how uncreative the Eagles offense was last year, and whether you want to pin that on Sirianni or pin it on Brian Johnson, whatever you want to do, this is certainly a big change with Sirianni kind of letting go of some of the reins and adopting more of an overseer sort of head coaching role, one where he's more in charge of just the overall operations and the culture and all that stuff, while Kellen Moore is going to handle the offense. And, I think it's probably a good thing. We'll see what it means for guys like A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, if it'll just be more of the same. I mean, they were both fairly fantasy productive last year. I mean, they both had stretches where they were pretty bad. A.J. Brown tailed off at the end. So maybe Kellen Moore can, create some more consistency out of these guys.
Keenan Allen. Because Keenan Allen was awfully consistent when he was out there this year.
Keenan was a freak.
Brown's a whole lot better.
Yeah, and we didn't really get a chance to see what Kellen could have done in LA with, a consistent secondary option because Mike Williams went down so early, and then it was just a rotation of, trying to throw in Josh Palmer and Stone Hands Quentin Johnston. Gerald Everett was probably the biggest other beneficiary there. So Donald Parham, my boy. I think this is a good move for Philly, and I think overall good move for the offense. Next, we've got the Steelers, Pat. Our boy Arthur Smith. We talked about it, how we do think this is a good fit. I think primarily this is good for the running backs because, for as much as we got frustrated with him not giving Bijan the ball, it's going to be different when you have two running backs here who were both startable in fantasy to some degree, either as an RB2 or a flex, Najee and Jaylen Warren. And I think with how good of a kind of an RB whisperer Arthur Smith is, honestly, Arthur Smith got career years out of, he's a rookie, but he got great years out of Tyler Algier, Cordero Patterson, old-ass Cordero Patterson. This is a guy who knows how to run the ball. So I'm optimistic for both Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren to once again be startable fantasy assets. Those are guys who I'll be monitoring their ADP very closely because I'm interested in both of them. It's just a matter of how are we going to value them compared to each other and compared to the rest of the field.
And, we've joked about, how Arthur Smith uses these random-ass players. But at the end of the day, like you said, Cordero Patterson, he does like some of these gadget guys. And that's why I like this more for Jaylen Warren, who is the better running back, in my opinion, just all things considered. But he's more of a pass catcher. He's quicker as opposed to Najee, which is more of a straight-ahead guy, which people are going to, think, like Derrick Henry. And it's like, no.
Not quite.
It's very hard.
There is no comparison for Derrick Henry except maybe tall Marshawn Lynch. There's no one else.
I think this is just going to show us this is going to be Arthur Smith's chance here to kind of stand alone. Is he the guy in Tennessee who was probably carried by Derrick Henry, or was he this bozo in Atlanta who just wanted to piss everyone off? Or is he somewhere in the middle, which is probably going to be the answer. But, again, I think that Steelers offense is so contingent on who is quarterback. And Kenny Pickett is not it. Mitch Trubisky is not it. Mason Rudolph is not it. They need to get a quarterback. And if there's no quarterback, I don't think Arthur Smith is going to be very useful in general. So
yeah. And that's why I'm not ready to, be optimistic about really anything in this offense outside of the running backs. So I think the running backs are going to be schemed up in a creative enough way and get enough work, each of them, that they'll be fantasy relevant. But that's why I'm not putting any eggs in the George Pickens basket or the Pat Freiermuth basket right now.
I want to put all my eggs in the George Pickens basket.
I know you do.
So good. He looked so good at the end of the year in these limited spells. The guy is a freak, but it's just, is he going to be in the system? Is he going to have the quarterback? That's what scares me. But if things kind of look better, God, he's going to be one of my pals.
Yeah, he doesn't. Right now, things don't seem to be pointing, up directly for him. But maybe the offense. Look, if they get a quarterback, who knows? We'll have that conversation. Pat, the Buccaneers. New offensive coordinator is Liam Cohen. So he was the Rams offensive coordinator in 2022, then spent last year as Kentucky's offensive coordinator. This is kind of a bit of a dark horse option. This is one of the more unknown options, even though he was the Rams OC for a year, and the Rams offense has been great for years. But that's Sean McVay's team, right? Sean McVay's the one calling the plays. Sean McVay's the one that probably taught Liam Cohen a lot of this stuff. So this just some notes from Cohen's time, at Kentucky. He's heavy on motion, heavy on play action, which are generally good things in the modern NFL. We always hear, shit talk about offenses that don't move guys around the formation, whether it's pre-snap or just in general. But Kentucky was 131st out of 133 teams in college football at just 54 plays per game. So they had a lot of drives stall out. They had a lot of drives that were also, boom or bust drives where they may have ended it in a play or two because they created explosive plays. But overall, there were not a lot of plays run by those Kentucky teams led by Liam Cohen. This is very much, to me, just a wait and see hire. It sounds good in theory because McVay, disciple, all that, but just not a guy we know a lot about. And I could see this offense not doing very well under this guy, and nobody's going to be surprised because we don't know much about him or have many expectations for him. It could very much go either way. So that's where I'm at with Liam Cohen.
Yeah, I don't have a ton of thoughts on this either. I'm just concerned, are we going to see a big step back from Baker Mayfield after, assuming it's Baker Mayfield?
Sure.
And it's could this also expose Rachaad White's weaknesses, as we talked about? He's not an efficient runner. His volume made him very, very fantasy relevant, an RB1, for God's sake, but he still may not be that guy, and this could expose this. And, it's like he is a Rams disciple, but he isn't. Like, he was the wide receiver coach and the assistant quarterback coach. Then he went to Kentucky. Then was only the OC for 1 year. But McVay thought enough of him to bring him back into that position. But then he bolted again right away. So it's like, I really just, I don't, wait and see is probably the best way to sum this up.
Yeah, there's certain guys that we just can't make a concrete prediction of what they're going to be in the NFL when we haven't seen them in this prominent of a role, in a long time. Like, again, he was offensive coordinator for the Rams, sure, but McVay was calling those plays. Now he's offensive coordinator on a team with a defensive-minded head coach. It's a completely different animal, so we'll see how it plays out. The Saints unofficially have hired offensive coordinator Clint Kubiak. He is on the 49ers staff, which is why this is not official just yet. But Kubiak, not going to be a first-time play caller. He was the offensive coordinator. He was the offensive coordinator for the Vikings in 2021 for Kirk Cousins' best season statistically. And now he has a year of experience with Kyle Shanahan as the 49ers pass game coordinator. I will say I've seen some people, in my opinion, disingenuously referring to Kubiak as a guy off the Shanahan tree. This was literally his first year with Kyle Shanahan, so I don't know about that. Like,
have you seen the man's last name?
I'm sure there are things he could learn from Kyle and maybe bring over with him to the Saints, but calling him a Shanahan disciple is definitely stretching it a bit too far. Pat, this offense is still going to come down to Derek Carr. I mean, I really don't care that much about the offensive coordinator right now. I think Kubiak can do a good job, but if Derek Carr is going to continue to just be mid-ass Derek Carr, you're going to get inconsistent play around the entire offense. I think I'm a little more optimistic maybe for a guy like Alvin Kamara, who was used in just completely uncreative ways last year, and you've got a guy coming who was just, run game fucking paradise in San Francisco. Hopefully he picked up a thing or two, but Alvin Kamara is also a guy who's aging, and I'm probably not going to be super interested in anyway. I think he might have a resurgence, but I'm just not interested enough to draft him. In general, it's going to come down to Derek Carr, and with the Saints, next year, I really only foresee myself being interested in Chris Olave, and that's going to be about it.
He was very disappointing.
He was.
Also, as you can see, it is about 5 p.m. Eastern time at the moment, as opposed to 3 p.m. where Brandon is, so it's getting dark in here. I tried to roll here. Might have to get up and turn the light on in a second here, but
that's all right. Our audio listeners won't care.
I agree about the Derek Carr sentiment completely. Like, he's not the guy. Like, there are so many teams that need a new quarterback, and they're one of them. Like, I love the guy, but he was really, really bad. And honestly, even Jameis, give Jameis a run over him with how crazy and inconsistent he is. Like, let him get a shot here. But, again, it's hard to pass judgment on this. Because, like, Kubiak, like the 49ers. You have Derek Carr.
Yeah.
You have Derek Carr, and it's just like, well, look at Brock Purdy's running this. It's like, Brock Purdy doesn't make stupid-ass decisions all the time.
Right.
And Derek Carr's a chucker. You can say all things about Derek Carr, but that man loves to chuck the ball. And you're going to make mistakes, but I'm not ready to pass any kind of real judgment here on the Saints, because it's make or break, and I think they're going to break. I think this is it for Dennis Allen, and I agree.
The Saints, I think, are trending down maybe more than any team in the NFL, to be honest.
Especially with the health, the Bucs look good at the end of the year. Things look promising. The Falcons, in theory, should be competitive. It's just like,
the Saints are also in cap hell and really no way to get out of it. I saw that the best way they can free up space is to extend Derek Carr, and I'm like, man, you guys are down bad. So I'm not super into the Saints in general. Clint Kubiak might be fine, but it's not going to be some groundbreaking sort of thing. The Titans head coach Brian Callahan is coming over from the Bengals. He is going to be the one to call plays, and he was Bengals OC from 2019 to 2023. He's never called plays before. And that's what leads me to believe this is maybe the biggest wild card of all the hires outside of Liam Cohen, certainly the biggest wild card of a head coaching hire, because, if you're an offensive coordinator for 5 years, but you're not calling the plays, I don't really know what your MO is. Like, I don't. Like, I know that you are good enough to have a productive offense that features Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Joe Mixon. Good for you. Like, I don't know much about what he can do with a lesser talented team, and as a first-time play caller, it makes me just generally nervous. The Titans, though, Pat, this is a team that's going to essentially be fully rebuilding. I think the only Titan I'm interested in as of this very moment on February 6th is probably Tyjae Spears, assuming Derrick Henry's gone, just from a workload perspective. But Brian Callahan as a first-time play caller, maybe I'm looking too deep into it, but the fact he never had more responsibility in Cincinnati or was never, I guess he's not going to get a chance as a play caller, but maybe
Zach Taylor there.
Yeah, the fact he wasn't hired anywhere else before this or really looked at much to my knowledge, it just doesn't make me super excited for the hire.
He was getting some looks, but he's also very young.
He? Okay.
But yeah, it's the another nepotism guy. Yeah, he actually is bringing Bill over from the Browns to be his O-line coach. Nice gesture there by the Browns to let him go, but I like it just from the sense that, like, I think they must have known that, like, hey, if we're going to get something out of Will Levis, it's going to be from Brian Callahan. And I think the way you get Will Levis is to let that man throw the ball. Let him
cook. Yeah.
Yeah, let Will Levis cook. And if it burns out, it fails. But, I mean, in the Tim Kelly offense, you were never going to get that out of Will Levis, except for that one ridiculous game he had where he just threw the ball 50 yards to DeAndre Hopkins miraculously, but
every play.
That was never going to happen. He was never going to be able to flourish in that. And Callahan, they must have seen something that, hey, like, this is the guy that's going to bring the most out of him. So I said a couple weeks ago when they did, I really like the hire. Again, I don't think this team's going to necessarily be very good this year, but again, the moniker is going to be, how good is Will Levis?
Yeah, I don't think, again, not a team with a ton of fantasy relevant players on it. I guess DeAndre Hopkins, but again, he's just kind of off my radar because of the age in general. Chig Okonkwo, maybe we get a resurgence from our boy Chig, but as of now, it's really just Tyjae Spears for me. And yeah, I don't know. I try to find hires that I am not going to be super optimistic on because there's some of them are just inevitably not going to work out, and this feels like one that I don't have reasons to be super excited for. So maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe the Titans will,
but I feel
maybe
like
this is their guy.
That was the case with Zach Taylor as well.
That's fair. That's fair enough.
That's kind of the way I'm looking at it. But
yeah, I don't recall what my thoughts were on that hire because that was, way back
he
at
was
this
the
point.
Rams QB coach, and that was kind of just when, like, everybody from the Rams was getting hired. So it's like,
Sean
McVay. Well, that's turned out pretty damn well.
It has, yeah. You haven't really had any that completely
same thing with Kevin
out.
O'Connell in Minnesota. It's like, these younger offensive-minded guys is probably the way to go, and I think out of the hires they could have had, I think they got one of the better options. But
yeah, if Sean McVay breathes on you, it's a good thing. And then finally, the Commanders with head coach Dan Quinn and offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury. So
almost Raiders.
Offensive coordinator. Yeah, that one was weird. It seemed like it was all but done, and then the contract talks broke down, and now here he is in Washington.
More money.
Yeah, so look, Cliff is experienced. He's overseen some elite fantasy seasons from guys like DeAndre Hopkins, James Conner, although Conner's was largely weighted by touchdowns. But hey, that's to Cliff's credit, getting a team in position to score that often. So, this is much like the Dan Quinn head coaching hire. I think this is fine. I think the offense can produce under Cliff Kingsbury. I think there is room for, potentially even elite fantasy production if they get the right players in there. As of right now, it's not making me jump out of my chair for a guy like Terry McLaurin or for a guy like Brian Robinson. I have not seen that kind of top-end production from either of those guys. We've seen good seasons for sure.
Brian Robinson had a really nice stretch there.
He was
catching the ball a ton, though.
Yeah, and under a new guy, you just don't know if that's going to continue. I just don't think either of them were blow you away successful where it's like, I'm definitely drafting these guys because Cliff Kingsbury is the offensive coordinator. At the very least, Cliff Kingsbury is a potential vessel for good production if they put together the right personnel.
Terry is the epitome of better real-life player. Terry's a fantastic real-life player, but it's just never had the production needed, and presumably it's going to be Drake May at the helm. And, it's funny because I was thinking, like, Kingsbury could maybe make something out of Sam Howell. And then it's like, wait a minute. And they also, obviously, this has stoked the fire of them moving up a spot and drafting Caleb Williams, who Cliff Kingsbury was his offensive coordinator at USC. So that's kind of stoked that, kind of stoked those flames. But whether it's Williams or Drake May, I mean, again, like you said, Kingsbury, we've seen, guys succeed under him. And it was probably the best thing Dan Quinn could have done in this situation, was get a guy with some experience to lead this kind of rebuilding team.
Yeah, and I think it'll be fun to see what Cliff Kingsbury can do as, just the offensive coordinator. Because in Arizona, he was the head coach. Obviously, that comes with
never been an offensive coordinator in the NFL.
I didn't think so. So, you have other responsibilities when you're a head coach on top of he was doing the play calling. So I think if he can just hone in on offense, and that's all he's doing now, I'm curious to see if that yields any sort of different results. But look, the results in Arizona, at least offensively and for fantasy production, were pretty good most of the time. So the door is certainly open for the Commanders, depending what players they bring aboard here. Pat, some offensive coordinators that are still TBD, so we'll just keep an eye on these. The Browns with Alex Van Pelt leaving, the Seahawks and the Bengals with Brian Callahan leaving.
I also missed this. The Browns hired Ken Dorsey from Buffalo.
Oh, you're right. My bad.
I did not
forgot
even see
about
the TBD. That's on me. I should have put. I was reading this and did not even see the TBD. I would have put something.
No, you're right. I totally forgot.
Ken Dorsey was kind of a fall guy. Touch on it really quick because we got to do one more thing here. To touch on it really quick, Ken Dorsey was kind of the fall guy. Like, obviously, the offense did look a bit better. It was certainly different under Joe Brady than Ken Dorsey, but we've seen Ken Dorsey be very successful, whether as a QB coach or an OC. And I think, and like you said, they fired Alex Van Pelt because they wanted someone more suited for Deshaun Watson, and I think that is more so what Ken Dorsey is like.
Yeah, I would agree. I totally missed that. I rely on this website that has all the coaching changes, and it has some on there that were like even more recent than Ken Dorsey, and I'm like, why did you not have Dorsey? But yes, I do remember seeing that.
Over a week ago, I think. I completely...
Yeah, it was a little while ago. It just completely went past my brain. I don't know. Too many coaching changes, man. It's fucking a lot to keep track of. All right. We will move on here. Real quick note just on head coaches in general, because I thought this was funny. Mike Vrabel, one of the notable coaches still on the market here and is going to stay on the market, wasn't hired because he's large, apparently.
That man too big.
He's fat. Diana Rossini reporting that a GM mentioned to her that Mike Vrabel's physical size is a reason that teams passed on him for head coach. Apparently, folks involved in the hiring process can find him intimidating, and that makes them not want to hire him, which is hilarious.
A lot today too, though.
Did she? Okay.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what she said, but she backpedaled. Let's see. I just searched her on Twitter. No, nothing here on Twitter, but I saw something about how she was like, "Oh, he's not too big. He's this," but good for Diana Rossini. It would, but yeah. So what's next?
All right, well, yeah, we can move on from that. Mike Vrabel not getting hired because he's fat, unless Diana Rossini says otherwise. Pat, we'll do our Super Bowl bets first. Just real quick, knock these out, and then we'll finish out with our Super Bowl moments draft. No viewer questions. Sorry, you guys sent bad questions this week, and we're running low on time. But Super Bowl bets, just to get a couple out here and remind you guys what we think about the Super Bowl. Pat, for the winner of the Super Bowl, you and I are both betting Chiefs, which they are underdogs still somehow. So I think that's going to be a good money bet, apparently. So we can hammer that one. First touchdown. Score. Chiefs 31, Niners 29. I don't know how we get there, but that's what I like.
I've got Chiefs. I've got 24-21.
Okay, fair enough. So slim margins regardless. First touchdown score. I found myself enjoying doing these first touchdown scorer bets each week. So my gut's telling me Debo. I think the Niners are going to get creative. This always comes down partially to who wins the coin toss, as long as the offense, doesn't fizzle out in the first drive. But I think Debo, just good gut call. And then Pat, who are you going with here?
I'm going with Isaiah Pacheco. I think you're going creative. I'm going Chiefs are just going to get down the field. Pacheco's going to have a good carry inside the 10, and it'll be him. He's my boy. He's been my boy all season. Gotta keep with him.
That's fair. And then this bet, Pat, there are some fun Super Bowl props, obviously. You've got national anthem time. You've got all these things. One bet that has been going on is, will Travis Kelce propose to Taylor Swift on the field after the game?
The fuck? No!
This is a bet that you can bet on. I'm going yes. I don't care. Travis Kelce's going to propose to Taylor Swift on the field after the game, and it is going to be one of the most
you belong
iconic.
With me, E.
One of the most iconic American sports moments of all time is going to take place. But that's our Super Bowl.
Do the Super Bowl draft again next year, is this going to be in the first? Good segue here.
I'm going to draft it first overall right now. But yes, we will get into, in the waning moments of today's show, our Super Bowl moments draft, the best Super Bowl moments of all time. Pat, for time's sake, you want to do 3 picks each, and we'll just have the best 3?
Or do you want to stick with 5? Let's see if we got time. Let's do 3 and see if we got time.
All right, so we've got moments here. We normally do 5 picks each, and we'll see if we get there. Pat, I will do you the honor of giving you the first pick here.
I think we're going to be very biased here, but this night was one of the best nights of my life. I used to be a New York Giants fan as a young lad, and I will never forget this moment. I'm going with the David Tyree helmet catch from Super Bowl 42, which was the key play. Eli Manning, an incredible in escaping the pocket, an incredible catch with the gum that was on his helmet that Justin Timberlake put there. And that helped them knock down the undefeated Patriots. That was still, to this day, the greatest sports night of my entire life, and probably one of Brandon's worst.
I literally wrote on my notes list, not David Tyree, just to have it marked down as, it happened, and I know it's considered one of the best. Yeah, Pat, the David Tyree catch is like my first vivid football memory, period. Like that was the first year I really got into the Giants. That was the season. Well. That was the first season I really followed it. I think because the Patriots were obviously going undefeated all year, my grandpa kind of tuned into the Patriots more than he had in the past. So then my little ass is seeing him have it on the TV and watching more. So I remember sitting down watching that Super Bowl. Like, I'm a Patriots fan now, siding with grandpa, and I've been a Patriots fan now to this day. And I see that happen. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Are you fucking kidding me? And then it happens again a few years later with Mario Manningham and the Giants.
That is on my list. Not going to pick that one, but that was on my short list of about 15 here.
But before, cry me a river, but my first few memories as a Patriots fan were just us losing in the Super Bowl in devastating fashion before I ever actually saw us win one. So yeah, the David Tyree catch, certainly not my favorite. My favorite Super Bowl moment, by far, obviously, Malcolm Butler's interception. Malcolm Butler's interception against the Seahawks. I remember. So. Well, because again, Pat, building off of the David Tyree thing, it was like we had that stretch and then didn't go to the Super Bowl for a little while, and then it was like we're there, and oh my fucking God, it's happening again. Jermaine Kearse makes that ridiculous catch on the sideline.
Also on my list.
I'm like, you're kidding me. And then they've got Marshawn Lynch. They're going to run it, and just kidding. They're going to chuck a pick to Malcolm Butler. I lost my mind. That is probably still my favorite overall sports moment as a fan.
Yeah, I remember that one vividly, too. Just like the complete shock, like the complete, jubilation. It's like, oh my God, the Patriots are going to lose another Super Bowl. Like, what a treat. And just for that to happen, it was just such a roller coaster. I was with several Patriots fans, so for them it was, but it was incredible. Like, that's probably the correct answer for the first pick, but I had to go a little biased.
I understand.
And I'm being a little biased here with the second one because I think the next two options both come from Super Bowl 43, one of the best Super Bowls in my opinion. I'm probably going to go with the wrong answer again. I'm going to go with James Harrison's 100-yard interception return to end the first half against the Cardinals. It's probably not even the best play from that game, but just James Harrison, just this big fatty. I mean, there are much bigger guys, but for him, it was a nice pick, good vision in the first place, but for him to make it 100 yards to end the half was just, no blocks in the back, nothing like that, to not get chased down by Larry Fitzgerald. That is just one of the most fun plays in the Super Bowl that I can ever remember.
I do have a vivid memory of him with the oxygen mask on the sideline after that return. So, yeah, definitely.
And he deserved it. Good for him.
He did. Pat, I'm trying to decide if I want to go with the objective right pick here or just continue to be a little biased bitch and just make it like an all Patriots list if I can help it. I'll do the right thing and take the other play from that game, which is Big Ben to Santonio Holmes, corner of the end zone. Just definition of toe tap, like picturesque, just beautiful. That was definitely one of the best Super Bowls of all time, just because of the theatrics of it. I mean, it was incredible. So I'm going to go with that for my second.
Warner-led Cardinals team was this close to winning a Super Bowl. That would have been just an unbelievable story. But yeah,
still wish Larry got one, man.
That's probably the best. Well, no, I think the best one's still that first Giants-Patriots one. But I mean, that's the other one that comes to mind. The Patriots-Falcons is another one that comes to mind. But all right, so we'll start off the third. We might have time for another one after this. We probably will. Ooh, this is tough. I would like to go with one that I did not witness live. So I'm basically gonna go with the catch part 2. Joe Montana to oh God, what Super Bowl was this in? Joe Montana. Oh God.
This is what we get. We're not old
John
enough.
Taylor. God, I forgot his name. I kept wanting to say to John Taylor, people call it the catch part 2. They stormed down the field. Super Bowl 23, going way back. Way back. Got to give a shout out to the old heads there. Not a super great play, but just to cap off that drive the way they did to win. I mean, Joe Montana will always be one of the best.
Nah, fuck Joe Montana. Brady better. Okay.
You're correct. But
I know. Just, I got to be petty. Okay, with my
pick
next
Julian
pick,
Edelman, and then we'll move on.
I will pick Julian Edelman. Yeah, that was what I almost took in my. I almost just picked 28-3 as an overall moment, but I was like, let me narrow it down and actually make it a play since the rest of them are plays. Yeah, that catch felt like some level of vindication for all of the fucking absurd catches that have happened against the Patriots over the years. I was like, hey, we got one now. We got one now too. And in slow-mo, it's just incredible.
Yeah. One of those in real time where you're like, how the hell? Like, what the hell? No way you caught that. And then you look at it the first replay and you're just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like, I remember that too. Like, oh my God, he caught that. That was kind of when I stopped being a blind Patriots hater. And, I could just sit back and enjoy the game for what it was. And that Super Bowl was incredible.
Appreciate some of the good things.
It was incredible. The Giants got ours. I got my joy out of watching them lose, but that was a lot of fun. Yeah, well, we got time for we may get to 5. Let's go one more here and see where we are. Ooh, I got 2 that I really want to go with, but I'll go with this one. Another one before our time. Super Bowl 34, Mike Jones tackling Kevin Dyson at the 1-yard line to save the game for the Rams to beat the Titans.
Okay, I came across this when I was Googling best Super Bowl moments to refresh my memory, and didn't know that. Not very familiar with that play.
Before.
No, I don't think so.
See, unless it was, that's all over the place.
Maybe I have, and I just don't recall. But look, that one, Pat's going with the throwbacks here, so certainly not ones that I can speak on too much. Obviously, yeah, that's fair enough. All right, with my 4th pick, I will go. I'm going to go with the surprise onside kick by the Saints in Super Bowl 44.
Oh, my God, you took my pick.
That is just such a shocking moment. I remember seeing that one live and being like, you fucking lunatic, what are you doing? I think that is peak Super Bowl. To do that on that stage is unbelievably ballsy, and that's why I remember it to this day.
The first play to open the second half.
Exactly.
Nuts.
Ridiculous. Incredible play.
Yeah, Sean Payton had some stones for doing that. All right. We got one more here. We got time. I got to give my honorable mentions, obviously. The Leon Lett fumble when Joe Bolton got tackled at the one. They still scored 50 points in that game, so can't pick that one. The Jermaine Kearse catch, incredible. If they win that game, that's towards the top of the list. Did not happen. So now I've got deciding between 2 here. You just picked one from this game, so I think I'd like to go a little different here.
You're thinking about Tracy Porter?
I'm thinking about Tracy Porter, but I'm going to pivot just to get one more dig at Bran. This was absolutely an illegal formation, but let's go with a Philly special.
Oh, yeah. That's another one that I have jotted down as not the Philly special. I'm glad you picked it just to get it off the board here because it deserves to be.
But yeah.
Just for that to happen, oh my God, my memory's failing me now. Was that before or after Brady's failed catch? That was after, right? They successfully executed it. Patriots ran a trick play in the same game.
I remember the play.
And overthrew Tom. I think the Brady play was after.
I don't know about that.
I think the Brady, it's fair. I think the Brady play was after, and they were trying to get their lick back. But I don't remember. Either way, they failed it, and the Eagles executed it flawlessly. All right, with my final pick, Pat.
Well, that was the same game, Brandon. The Brady drop, I don't know what happened in the game before. Oh, see, I was thinking it was a different game.
Oh, no, same game.
I feel like the Philly special was early. I feel like the Philly special was really early in the game.
I think, the Patriots tried to we could do this too, and it didn't work.
Florida Gators starting quarterback Trey Burton with the the touchdown pass on that one. Great trivia question answer.
With my final pick, I'm going to go with a play that did not happen during the course of the game. It is left shark during Katy Perry's Super Bowl performance.
Yeah.
Left
How did
shark
I forget that?
And his complete botch of the choreography during Katy Perry's halftime show. I got to mix it up here and get something a little wild into the mix as well. So Left Shark with my final pick.
I was thinking of halftime. I was thinking of stuff too, like the lights going out in New Orleans.
I had that on my list, just in case.
I was thinking about how the fuck did I forget Left Shark? Oh.
I may have won the draft with my final last-minute Left Shark pull. All right, folks. Thank you for tuning in this week, guys. Enjoy the Super Bowl. We will be back here next week at our normal time, presumably, of 7:30 Eastern time to give you guys our Super Bowl reactions. And, Pat, God, I don't fucking know. Talk about whatever the offseason has to unfold for us. Maybe we'll get into some free agents. We'll see what exactly next week holds. But this time next week, we'll have a Super Bowl champion. And we'll talk about it, whether it makes us very sad or just a little sad. Because to be honest,
I don't think I'm going to care. Yeah,
those are the only two options with a Chiefs-Niners Super Bowl. I'll be happy if Kittle gets a Super Bowl though. So whatever. All right, for Pat Gustafson, I'm Brandon Carney, and we'll see you guys next week.